Conner Weigman is the best kept secret in college football.
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on to Locked On Aggies. I'm your host, Andrew Stefaniak. Thanks for making Locked On Aggies your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So, a bit of housekeeping here. First, a lot of guys, baseball players, enter the portal. We're not going to get into that today, but just a lot of names there. The only other time I plan to discuss baseball this offseason is when a new coach is hired, but a lot of guys in the portal. If you want to vent on that, you're more than welcome to do so in the comments. We had some of that yesterday. And to our friend Aggie Far From Home, who everyday listener, commenter, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not leaving for Locked On Texas. It's not going to happen. I promise. I'm not going anywhere. That was funny. That was one of my favorite comments ever in the history of doing this show. That was really funny. That was a day maker. But getting straight into this episode. Oh, one more piece of news I want to share. I'm going to be out of town. I'm going to Spain from July 8th through 16th. So I'm going to give you all the schedule. I'm going to pre-record some shows, just previewing games with other Locked On hosts for that week. And then I'll get back, and then the Thursday and Friday of the 17th and 18th of July, I'll be back business as normal. So wanted to share that. I'll give you a schedule on that the closer we get to it. But I want to talk about Conner Weigman being the best kept secret in college football. I don't, so here's the deal. I've got a couple lists here. One from just a Twitter page, and then another from, like a ranking, and then another from Phil Steele. And it's the top 2025 NFL draft prospects at quarterback. So this list from this is just, who's this? This is just a person on Twitter. The other one's from Phil Steele, so that one's the more credible one. But still fun to look at this list. This one here has Shedeur Sanders, number 1, Jalen Milroe, number 2, Quinn Ewers, 3, Carson Beck, 4, Cam Ward, 5. I think Cam Ward is going to have a really good season. Drew Aller, 6th, Conner Weigman, 7th, Graham Mertz, 8th, Noah Fifita. I have not heard of him. Arizona guy. You all know I'm an SEC guy. And then Dylan Gabriel, 10. So that's the top 10 list here. Then this top 10 list from Phil Steele, I think, is a way better list, but still has Conner Weigman, same spot. Carson Beck, 1, Jackson Dart, 2, Shedeur Sanders, 3, Drew Aller, 4, Jalen Milroe, 5, Quinn Ewers, 6, Conner Weigman, 7, Cam Ward, 8, Kyle McCord, 9, Miller Moss, 10. Now, I'll tell you this. I would have Cam Ward higher on this list. I think he's going to have a really good season. I think he's got an NFL upside. But, I was on Locked On College Football yesterday with host Spencer McLaughlin. Always great talking to Spencer. And, when discussing with him Conner Weigman, the conversation with him started with us breaking down the schedule for Texas A&M and talking about which game is the most important, which I shared my opinion of. I think Auburn and Florida are the two most important games, maybe not challenging games, but important games on this schedule. And then we got into quarterback conversation. He said, Andrew, I'm starting to buy in a little bit to the Conner Weigman hype train. And he said, what are your thoughts? And I said, well, Spencer, he is the best kept secret in college football. I think that Conner Weigman is going to put together a spectacular season. I just, the flashes have been there. True freshman year, obviously, wasn't the starter, came in, played a few games. Sophomore year was the starter, gets banged up and is only able to play in a few games. So I think this is the year if he can stay on the field. And once again, if he can't stay on the field, then that creates its own concerns for the next level. But if he's able to stay on the field this year, I think Conner Weigman is going to be a quarterback who is in the Heisman conversation for a while. Is he going to win the Heisman Trophy? No, I don't believe he's going to win the Heisman Trophy. But I believe he is a quarterback. He is a player that could be in that conversation. And once again, I want to reiterate that point very, very well. I am not saying Conner Weigman is about to win the Heisman Trophy. I do not believe that is going to happen. But I believe that his name will be discussed for a long time. Don't think he'll be a finalist either. I'm just saying I think he'll be a name that week 9 or week 8 you go, man, is Conner Weigman in the Heisman race? And you go, how'd that happen? And they'll kind of sneak up on you because, once again, I think Conner Weigman is the best kept secret in college football. So, looking at his projected season, I think that he's got the weapons to be really good. Receivers, tight ends, offensive line is going to be better. Running backs are going to be really solid. He's got the pass catchers. He's got, I think, the blocking. I'm not going to be elite, but it's going to be better. And when I look at that, I look at this offense, and then obviously Colin Klein's a weapon that I think is going to help as well. But looking at this, team and what it can be, the more I look at it, the more I just get excited that Conner Weigman is going to be able to have an elite season, and he's going to be able to move up draft boards. I'll tell you, I think there's a very realistic world where Conner Weigman ends up having a really good season and moving on to the NFL after this year. I think a lot of people assume he's not going anywhere after the season. I think there's a real world where Conner Weigman has a massive season and he is moving on to the NFL after this season. The other thing that's interesting from this list, I've seen a lot of quarterback lists. Now, I know this is draft prospects, not, SEC quarterbacks ranked, because you've got the Missouri guy whose name I'm forgetting, Cook. You've got some guys that are good game managers, but and maybe not those elite quarterbacks, but they're the good, hey, get in there, manage the game type of guys, and but in most quarterback rankings lists for the SEC, I've seen Weigman in that 7 to 9 range. But if you count here, Carson Beck, Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, Quinn Ewers, this has him as the 5th best quarterback. I know it's for draft prospects, but the point is this backs what I'm saying, that Conner Weigman has super high upside this year. I told Spencer McLaughlin on the podcast when I joined him on the Locked On College Football Podcast yesterday. I said, listen, I believe that Conner Weigman's going to finish as a top 4 quarterback in the SEC. And I really do believe that. That's not just, saying a number. I mean, there's a strategic reason I believe 4 is the number. But I just think the weapons he has around him and the offensive coordinator that Conner Weigman has are going to help him put together an elite season where he's top 10 in Heisman voting and he sets himself aside to where he goes potentially maybe late first round in this, maybe first round somewhere in this 2025 NFL draft. So, that's going to be really fun to monitor. And once again, quarterback play defines everything. If you want to have a good season, you have to have a good quarterback. If your quarterback's not good, you are not going to be a good football team. That is just the reality of the game that we all love. You have to have a good quarterback. You just have to have a good quarterback. And the Aggies have one. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see how this breaks down. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you, I think Conner Weigman's going to put together a season that is going to be incredibly special. And I think y'all agree, and I can't wait to see how it plays out. But like I say, let's keep this between us. Let's keep this between us. Let's not let Conner Weigman let's let him continue to be the best kept secret in college football. I think it's a great term to define Conner Weigman. So the Aggies are going to have an elite quarterback this season. So, a SEC media website picked a few teams that were overrated and a few teams that were underrated heading into the upcoming season. Where do y'all think the Aggies landed? We'll talk about that coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. But first, I got to tell you about our friends over at GameTime. And as y'all know, it's always a good day when I get to tell y'all about GameTime. Once again, I will never purchase a ticket. Never in my life will I purchase a ticket from another ticket service. I'm only going to be buying my tickets from GameTime. You know, what I love about GameTime, the lowest price guarantee, or GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. I mean, you have this guarantee of the low price. You get to see your seat. You get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. And it's just, I love that. I love those two features, but I love that, we've all been there. It's Friday. Hey, you want to go to the baseball game today? Sure. Why not? Well, we got better to do. And you hop, okay, sure. The game's in 4 hours. Hop on Game Time. Get your tickets at the best price possible. That's why I love the Game Time app. Last minute tickets, as they say, best prices. It's the best place to go buy tickets. Never go anywhere else. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. So, Bama Hammer, which is always one of my favorite places to read articles because they are very pro Bama there. They're not pro. Sometimes it seems reality, I think, and I've noticed that a lot. Now their take here that I'm going to talk about isn't a crazy take. You know what I mean? Like, I've seen some crazy takes from websites sometimes, but I don't think I think a lot of people would agree with them on this. I would say that my opinion is probably the outlier compared to theirs here. But this has to do with SEC teams that are overrated and SEC teams that are underrated heading into the upcoming season. And they have the Aggies as an overrated team. So, and this has a lot to do with FPI. We talked about the FPI a few weeks ago. So let's get into what this means. So they say Texas A&M Aggies. They're listed as like the top overrated team. The Aggies are ranked number 14 in the FPI, which is too high for a team projected to win 7.6 games. A&M has one of the easier schedules for an SEC team at number 20, but the interior offensive line is a major weakness. 24/7 Sports ranked the A&M offensive line as the SEC's ninth best. That does not equate to an overall number 14 national ranking. So, I'll share my opinions here. I think looking at this, first of all, the FPI rankings, they're the ESPN FPI stuff. It's not. It's metrics, and it's kind of like, have y'all ever seen Trouble with the Curve, the baseball movie? It's a great movie. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. But the dude, the one character, he says, he's all about computers and metrics. Oh, this guy's stats. The computer says he can hit everything. The longtime MLB scout says he can't hit the curveball, and it's a great movie. I recommend it heavily. But and people don't believe him, but he says he can't hit the curveball. Turns out he can't hit the curveball. So this is metrics. This is metric stuff, and sometimes you kind of got to go. When do we take the computers and the metrics and the numbers out of the game we love? But so FPI to me, I care, but I don't care about FPI. Like, the FPI likes the Aggies, so that should be exciting. But, once again, it does have the projected win total at 7.6 games. But then you go to like any betting website and the most betting websites, and it's 8.5 games there. So, you know, looking at this, I don't think it's a reason to say the Aggies are overrated. I think it's simply metrics. I think when it comes to what the Aggies are going to be ranked on actual like top 25 stuff like that, let's say the Aggies are preseason ranked 24th, okay, to start the year out, and then Bama Hammer wants to come out and say, hey, that's too high for the Aggies. I can live with that. That's fair. But I just think this is a computer making these metrics. I mean, it's a computer based on lots of different variables making these metrics. So I don't think it's a reason to call a team overrated or underrated. And a lot of these, like Oklahoma's on this list. I believe it's Oklahoma, Auburn. I forget the other team. But point is, I don't know if I agree. I just think I don't know if I agree with the basis of the argument. I agree if you want to call Texas A&M an overrated team, I think that's fair. But I'll be honest with you, I don't. Teams that we call overrated are generally the teams that have a lot of preseason hype, and I don't think Texas A&M is a team right now that has a ton of preseason hype. You know what I mean? Like, compared to what we've seen with the Aggies the last handful of seasons, where it's like, oh, wow, Texas A&M, this is the year where they've got the talent. Jimbo Fisher's taking them to the promised land. And then it doesn't work out. But that Texas A&M was overrated those years. But this year, it's like, I think that they'll be very lucky to sneak into the back end of the top 25 rankings. And so I think that, in all honesty, based on the talent I believe Coach Oko has on this roster, I think Texas A&M is a bit underrated this year. And I like that. I think that's a great thing. And y'all often comment and agree with me. I think being underrated is a good thing. I'd rather be underrated than overrated. I think that, you don't want to be the team that everybody that has high expectations. And I'll already tell you who it's going to be this year, because it's them every year. It's going to be Notre Dame. Notre Dame's going to come to Cobb Field and lose week 1, and the sky's going to come crashing down, and people are like, what happened to Notre Dame? They're just never as good as people say. But I think that Texas A&M is a bit underrated this year. And once again, I really like that. I think it's a good thing. I think being underrated, you can kind of fly under the radar. You can not worry about anything. Just live the dream. Don't worry about, teams aren't saying, okay, here comes a top 10 Texas A&M team. It's, Florida week. Even if you beat Notre Dame, let's say you beat Notre Dame, Florida's still gonna be hyped up for that game, but I bet you Texas A&M still only ranked like 20, like probably 18th, So you go into Gainesville and it's okay, Texas A&M's a huge game, but it's not like here comes top 8 Texas A&M to us. It's, the crowd's be pumped up. I think that unless you start 3-0, there's not going to be much hype around Texas A&M for a good portion of the season. If you start 3-0, you beat Florida on the road, beat Notre Dame, then you're going to start to see some, wait a minute type of hype. You know what I mean? Wait, is this team good? Are the Aggies actually really good? Like, you're going to see that hype start to come about. And unless you start the year 3-0, I just don't think you're going to see that happen. Which I think is possible, but I still think, Notre Dame's a good team. I really think the Aggies win that game, but I don't think it's going to be an easy game for the Aggies to win against Florida on the road. So for them to go 2-0 in those games would not be a necessarily easy ask for this team. But to sum this all up, if you want to say they're overrated based on FPI, that's fair. But once again, FPI is like a computer metric thing. It's not like, human beings sitting down and going like, yeah, we like Texas A&M here. It's like they run metrics based on different variables within a football team. So if you want to say Texas A&M is overrated based on that, that's fair. But I think based on, human projection and where people think the Aggies should be, I think they're actually a tad bit underrated. So we'll end up seeing what happens there. I want to talk for a little bit about positions where depth is a concern. And my list isn't very long, and that is a really good thing for the upcoming season for the Texas A&M football team. We'll have that conversation coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. So, looking at my list here, I have positions where depth is a concern. And, I bet there's some teams that you do this list and it's 5, 6 positions long. For me, I have 3. And I think that is a positive for the Aggies once again. So first is wide receiver. And the key word here is depth. I'm not talking about concerns with stars. I'm talking about depth. We feel great about Ja'Day Walker, Noah Thomas, and Moose Muhammad. The concerns lie with the guys that are, behind them. And we feel good about is Cyrus Allen going to be okay? Do you got something special in T's? Like you've got some players there to back these guys up. But, if 2 guys drop or, you have a couple players get hurt, that's when you start to go, oh, we are starting to get thin at this position group. So I think that the wide receiver room, I like the top guys you got, and you've got some young guys. You've got talent in the room, but you don't have a lot of proven talent. And that is where the concern lies for me within the wide receiver room. So that's the first position, is wide receiver. The second position is linebacker. And once again, I feel great about Terry York. A huge conversation is who is linebacker 2. Is it DeShields? Is it Scooby Williams? Is it Sanford? Is it one of these other guys on the roster? Is it a young guy, a Jernigan? Who's the other linebacker on this roster? On this roster. And so I would say depth. I think you've got a lot of guys that can play, but you don't have a lot of experience. And I think that's where my concern comes from is you don't, experience matters. It really does. Having an experienced roster is something you just have to be a good, a deep, good position group. And while I think you've got a lot of talent in the linebacker room, I definitely believe there are some concerns when it comes to the actual depth of the room. Then lastly is offensive line. And, offensive line, you've got a lot of guys that can play, but do you have a lot of quality guys that can play? I believe that you're going to have 3 to 4 offensive linemen that are not in the starting lineup that can come in and play and be really good players for the Aggies. I do believe that. But I can't sit here and say that I don't have a little bit of concern when it comes to the depth of this team. There's definitely concern there for me when it comes to the depth of the offensive line. The offensive line, but I think this is a positive overall takeaway from me. I'm not sitting here saying, well, if Conner Weigman goes down, we're in trouble. And the running back room, you only have one guy, and then you have one good corner, and there's a ton of question marks there. Like, you feel really good about the depth all over this team, except for these 3 positions. But these 3 positions, when it comes to who's going to be out there starting, I think you still feel pretty good about. So, that would be my takeaway here is, while yes, there are some positions where you have concerns about depth, I think top to bottom, depth-wise, this roster is in a really good spot, which is something that should make Texas A&M fans feel good heading into the 2024 season. So, yes, at some places there were a little bit of concerns with the depth of position groups, but top to bottom, I think if you're a Texas A&M fan, you've got to feel great about the depth on this roster. That is going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Aggies. Thank y'all so much for being here every single day. Really, really do appreciate it. Hope everybody has an outstanding rest of their Thursday, and we will see you tomorrow on Friday right here on Locked On Aggies.